You're listening to 94.4 FM, Salford City Radio, the Friday sports show with your host, Jimmy Petruzzi, bringing you all the news from the local area and around the world, and very fortunate on this show to have some very fascinating guests, some of the world's best athletes across a broad range of sports. We talk to coaches, we talk to people who work in various disciplines related to sport, trainers, sports psychologists. We've talked to some really fascinating guests. We also have a segment that we talk to people in the field of psychology and related fields, mental health. There's some of the most influential people in the world of psychology on the show. We've given some really interesting insights into their perspectives and research. Today we have a really interesting guest, fascinating guest. I'm sure that we'll sort of be intrigued by what she does as an athlete and as a coach as well. Meryl Cooper, she's a health coach at Meryl Cooper Coaching, and she's a GP Ultra Trail runner as well. Meryl, welcome to the show. Great to have you on board.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, great to have you on board. I suppose we sort of start ultra trail running. Just for our listeners, Meryl, what is ultra trail running? It sounds like hard work. Yeah.
So basically it's trail running rather than road running. And the ultra part basically means that you're running over a distance that's over the marathon distance, so more than 42 kilometers. And typically what I do is kind of around the 50 to 100k distances, and they're generally in the mountains, maybe in the Alps, in Europe, things like that. So there's like a bit of altitude involved as well, and different terrain. So quite like technical, rocky, or even could be grassy, snowy, different terrains that you're covering. That's kind of ultra trail running.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It sort of sets the scene. I suppose the question is, how did you get into it? What sort of motivated you to get into ultra trail running?
Well, I remember seeing friends of mine, they'd gone to do a race, an ultra trail race in Switzerland, and it was called Eiger Ultra Trail. And I just remember, I can still picture my friend Heidi, and she was like in shorts and a vest. Wow. And she was running in snow in the summer in the Alps, and with the the mountains around her, and it just looked incredible. And I just saw that when I saw that picture, and I at the time, I was traveling a lot, and I loved traveling in my holidays and just exploring new places, and I just thought I wanted to go there. And then I kind of didn't realize what exactly that entailed. But yeah, I just when I saw that, it's like I really, really just could see myself doing that, and I signed up to do the race the following year. So I had like a whole year to kind of prepare myself for it, and so that was kind of how I got into it. I didn't really know that much about it, and it was really quite daunting, because there's so much you've got to consider about your kit and your clothing and what you eat and things like that. So I can still remember, because it was only in 2017, but I just remember it being quite an overwhelming experience to my first one, but really amazing as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting how you sort of, you seem to sort of, from say 2017, you've sort of progressed in the sport quite rapidly. I mean, in the sense that, what do you sort of put that down to, Meryl, yourself, in terms of your ability to do really well in ultra trail running?
I think what I put it down to is a bit of like my background in sport from a young age. So I love running on trails, because I'm not fazed by the kind of technicalness on the trail and the uneven terrain. I think through playing loads of different sports as a youngster, and then I went on to be a PE teacher as my career, just until the last kind of year or so. Just through so many different sports, I was quite fortunate that I did build up a lot of time on feet. I did build up a lot of balance and agility and coordination and a bit of endurance, but you do really need to train for endurance as well. So it's not something you can just go out the door and do. You know, you'll be in a lot of pain the next day if you go and just try and run 100 kilometers without the training. So yeah, I think it's the background in sport just allowed me to be really comfortable and confident on technical terrain, and then that meant it's just, you know, it just meant I could be quicker across that terrain than maybe somebody that doesn't have that foundation.
Yeah, and absolutely. And what I find interesting is like the sort of times, like for the distances in ultra trail running, because I suppose, you know, you could make a case for, say, if you're running a marathon, okay, 26.2 mile or thereabouts, you've got an idea of what's a part-time. I suppose different marathons might have different part-times, but they're not extremely dissimilar. Like, kind of sort of trail running, what are the sort of, you know, variances in times? Because I imagine one terrain is completely different to another, and that might sort of have a huge impact on times. Meryl, is that the sort of case? I mean, how do you sort of work out what's a part-time for trail running?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's quite hard to work out, especially if it's a new race and it's the first time. So the first race I entered to compete, it actually had never, that distance in that event was a new distance. It's 75 kilometers.
Wow.
And I had no idea how long it was going to take. You know, I had absolutely no idea. So it was like really just a bit of a guessing game. And it was hugely technical, and there was an altitude as well. You know, we were up at 3,200 meters for parts of it. And yeah, so it took a long time. It was like just over 11 hours that race took. And I was the winning female of it. So, you know, it was quite a shock, and that it can really change, and you can kind of get a bit of an idea if the race has existed before and look at times that are there and know, like, you know, would I maybe be in the fastest group or the middle or the slower group, and work out how long it might take. And you can also kind of look at the amount of elevation that there is over the distance, and then be like, well, that's quite a lot, or that's not too much, so it's going to be. But then still, going out and like going on the course and recceing it, you know, give you a good feel of how fast or slow the terrain is.
Interesting. And in terms of, did you go into that race sort of thinking, I know you mentioned there was one the female, you sort of won. Did you go into expecting you could win? I mean, obviously you're a competitor and have been competitive, but in terms of sort of, you know, getting into ultra trail running, was that your goal to win the race?
I really wanted to, because I'm competitive. But I really wanted to, but I also like had just, you know, I was so naive in a almost a good way that I had no experience. Really, well, I'd ran I ran 250Ks before in the previous year, so this was literally like it was my second one in Europe, you know, like of a big scale, and it was actually really interesting. I just kept visualizing. This wasn't planned visualization, but it just kept coming into my head. I just kept getting this like image in my head of me going across the finish line and grabbing the tape. I think I was seeing a lot of that on social media probably at the time, and I kept visualizing it. I just completely unplanned. It was really interesting, and I just had this goal of I wanted to see if I could be a competitive trail runner, because I just had this feeling that I had this ability after my experience the previous summer, because I'd ran most of it with a friend, and then when I left my friend to finish the last 20 kilometers at my own pace and so on, and you know, I was flying. I was just overtaking everyone. Felt amazing. And then you were able to kind of compare your times for each section of the race online, and it gave you like your rank of how fast you did that section. And the last 20 kilometers, I was very competitive compared to the rest and the overall time. So yeah, there was enough evidence there that I had some ability to just go and give this a shot. So yeah,
and I suppose in a way it's almost like, I mean, sort of, producing a run like that, is it a case of that's the benchmark now? So it's not so much a victim of your own success, but it's kind of like, okay, well, this is my expectation now. Did it sort of have an impact on your expectations for sort of future events, or how did that sort of pan out, sort of moving forward to think, okay, well, I've gone out there and, done extremely well, and in terms of future events, does that sort of change your expectation and anything like that, or?
A little bit, yeah. Like I just thought, from there on, I kind of thought, right, I want to keep putting myself up there with the best in the world. Like I don't want to go back a step and go and race small local races. I was like, okay, where can I go next, where I will be up against really high quality, so I can test myself? Because I didn't know if it was a fluke, like was it that I wasn't in a competitive field, and with it being a new distance, so I wanted more evidence again. So I then picked the next race it was ultratrail Cape Town, and picked the 65k distance there, and knew it would be competitive because it was on the Ultratrail World Tour, and it was, and went there with the goal to podium, because I knew it was going to be potentially, well, it was going to be more competitive, and I was kind of, you can go there and you have a score and you kind of can see where you're ranked when you go to a race, and I was obviously very ranked low down, maybe like 15 or 20 or something, just again because I didn't have much experience, so I was delighted to finish third there, but yeah, I think I just kind of knew from that first experience that I had, I was only going to keep getting better if I could keep really testing myself against the best. So I wanted to just make sure all the races I was then going to were competitive, because you can get, because at the time I was actually living in the UAE, in Dubai, and I was winning everything there, because you're not in and that's lovely and it's really enjoyable and feels nice, but then you got to keep challenging yourself and getting out your comfort zone, and so that's how I kind of moved forward. I certainly didn't expect to be winning everything, and I knew I just had to step it up a gear in terms of the races. Not that I like that race. I later found out that the girl that I raced with all day, there was a girl that finished in third place of the race that I did, the first competitive race I did, and she'd finished 8th in the World Champs earlier that year.
Wow.
So like when I found out that, I just couldn't believe it, and I just knew I had to go and make the most of this potential ability I have, and that did lead to me then taking a sabbatical year from teaching, which coincided a bit with COVID, which wasn't the best year, but I was still glad I did it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say, and I suppose what was in terms of the community of sort of trail run, ultra trail running, what was the sort of reaction like, with you sort of experiencing that sort of success, and I mean, I'm sure there people there who've been sort of been in the sport for a long time, and sort of you come along and what's the sort of feel in the community? Is it sort of one? I could imagine there is obviously, it takes a certain type of person, I would think, to do that sort of running, sort of mental strength. So I can imagine it's camaraderie, but I can imagine it's also very competitive. Did you find that was the case where, maybe some of the competitors thought, okay, we've got the real deal here type thing, and others,
I've only really got. It is an amazing community, a very friendly, welcoming, supportive community. The ultra trail running world. Until
you start winning.
Sorry.
Until you start beating them.
So I find it really pleasant. Yeah. But I think when you finish a race, and if you've not had a good race in ultra running, it's really hard in that moment to be a lovely, nice person.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because you put so much into your training. It's such a commitment in terms of the hours each week, and then it's just, and the things that go wrong in the races are quite often out of your control. You could just have a really unlucky day where your nutrition just isn't working with you, and you get unwell and you get sick, and if you've battled that and got to the finish line, you're just destroyed by the end. So I don't know. I think when I represented Great Britain last year, I was in a team with my trail running idols, and they were also just very welcoming. But what I was so surprised with, that everyone is just so normal, even though they are huge personalities and almost like celebrities to me as an ultra runner. They have very normal jobs, and are just really normal, very humble people, and so that was just really cool. Very normal people doing some very extraordinary things. It was just so inspiring. So I've been very lucky not to have experienced anything too unpleasant, I have to say. I can't even think of any examples. So
absolutely.
And
it can actually sort of camaraderie. I mean, you're sort of running those sort of distances. It's you can sort of, I suppose, that sort of mindset to run those distances on those terrains. And I mean, the training as well, I find really fascinating how you prepare for it, because there's so many variables. You've got the terrain, you've got different climate, different altitudes, but on top of that, the distances are very long too. And I mean, how does one train for ultra trail running, Meryl? What sort of do you do to train to prepare for the events?
So I do a lot of easy running. So there'll only be kind of 2 or 3 times in the week where there'll be intensity in there, and it's never, I'm not doing any speed work. I'm never working really at full speed or anything like that, as you're building volume, and you can't really do the two at the same time, or you could be risking injury. So you've got to be quite careful and smart with your training, but it can be tailored really specifically. So instead of doing flat tempo sets, there'll be uphill tempo reps, and they'll be quite long, so that they don't have to be really fast, because they're never going to be really fast in a ultra. So just building a lot of strength in the hills, and building a lot of endurance. Keeping the training consistent is just really important as well. So I think coaches are always looking to play it a little bit safer rather than risky, and really having you running on that risky kind of edge between injury, because ultimately you want to be able to build the volume and be training quite a lot of hours each week. So another really good way that my training can be specific to all these different variables is kind of looking at the race that I'm preparing for, and the estimated time that I might run it at, and how much elevation gain I will do per hour over that distance and that time. So it might be that 500 meters an hour of elevation gain, and then when I'm doing my training, I will go out on my long runs and try and get 500 meters per hour, and then that's as specific as I can kind of get, and I feel I'm prepared for that, because then you're going to run at a relatively similar pace, and the inclines are going to be a similar percentage and things like that. So it's just getting it as specific as you can, and working on weaknesses. If that's hills, if that's sustained running uphill and so on. So yeah.
That's really interesting.
Lots of easy running. It's not as horrible as it sounds.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. How you sort of. I mean, it's really intriguing how the preparation for that, because obviously the event itself, no doubt, is quite challenging, and sort of building up to that. But that's really interesting insight in terms of to GB. Where do they sort of stand on a global stage in terms of who sort of leads the way in from a country perspective, and obviously we've got a lot of great athletes in sort of GB, but where does sort of GB sit on the global stage in terms of producing runners?
So at a kind of team level in the world champs and these kind of competitions, they're generally always up there, in the top 5, and yeah, we saw that last year at the world champs. We were 5th, and as females were 5th, and the males I think were either 2nd or 3rd.
Wow.
Which is fantastic. And yeah, so there are countries like France and Spain are up there as well, and but there's a lot of really strong runners. I think there's more and more coming through. The ultra seems to be getting really popular. I don't know if it's just my age, in the 30s, that have more and more of my friends that have been marathon runners have seemed to be moving over to the ultras and the longer stuff, which is quite exciting.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And when I do move across, I mean, that must be really interesting. Obviously, going from sort of marathon into ultra running as well. I suppose is it sort of? I mean, with you having the experience of sort of being a sports person before, obviously that sort of was beneficial. Do people who move across find it sort of surprising, or what's the sort of feedback that you get from people who do move across, Meryl, from say marathon running, for example?
I think there's a lot who just in the beginning. It's interesting. I think because they really want to focus on pace. Having gone from kind of marathon training, there's a lot of focus on pace and maybe a lot also on like heart rate. But when people move, especially if you move to ultra trail, then the focus, you can't really look at your pace. You've got to really learn how to run to feel, and how
that's really interesting.
Your kind of effort level, because there are too many variables with the hills, with the terrain, with the weather. It could be headwind and stuff, and if you're trying to keep to a certain pace, then you need to adjust. And also on the road you can get by for quite a bit without massive fueling strategies, but with the ultra you've got to master eating and taking on fuel on the move to a very over a long period of time, and that's another element of the training which is really important. So that's what I think a lot of people find is the kind of particularly the fueling and the nutrition, and just finding their pace, but that just comes with it's just the unknown, isn't it? There's that area, there's extra kilometers at the end that they've not done, and maybe the hills that they've not been so used to, and I think it's just a case of getting one or two under your belt to get experience, because I had the exact same feelings in the beginning as well, going from different distances, like maybe going from the 50 to 100k. I was like, what on earth the pace I start at? I had no idea.
Well, of course,
once you've done one, you kind of know, and then do another, and then
that's
really, you've got to build that experience up a bit and learn for yourself, really.
Yeah, and that's really fascinating, that, because I suppose, like he says, if you're sort of running a marathon, You can sort of pace yourself. You've got an idea of where you want to be after 10 miles. Obviously, hit the wall. So you're sort of planning. But here it's a different ball game altogether. Really, it's so fascinating in terms of preparation and your own sort of vision for ultra trail running. Meryl, where do you sort of go? I mean, obviously this year COVID had a big impact, and at the time of recording, this is being a pre-record. Obviously different restrictions in different places, but all things being well, what's your sort of vision, moving forward? Where do you want to sort of take ultra trail running for yourself?
So I want to take my vision that was for 2020 forward to 2021, which is just to really keep being very competitive in the worldwide races, international races, and local races which have very competitive fields. So I'm looking for, when I'm picking my races, I'm still looking for them to be very competitive races, and I'm always looking to be going for the top spots now. It's looking to be trying to be on the podium in these races. I really want to be up there with the best in Britain and in the world now.
Yeah.
So I have a race. I do have one next year in February. I'm going up a little bit to 128 kilometers,
wow.
which will be sorry, my dog is barking. I'm going out the door. Sorry, pre-recording. And then from there, the races which I have. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I don't know if the races which I had planned for 2020 have all moved forward to next year. So I'm hoping to be able to do those races, and then the World Championships in 2021. Again, I'm very, I'm hoping that my performances in 2021 will allow me to be selected and represent Great Britain again next year.
Absolutely. No, that's certainly, keep an eye out and see how you get on with that. And in terms of your sort of health coaching, have you transferred some of the elements of what you do as an ultra trail runner? You also are a health coach as well. I mean, how does that generally work itself? Well, can you give us a bit of an insight into what you do as a health coach, and have you transferred some of the things you've learned in ultra trail running to being a health coach as well?
So I've basically, in my sabbatical year, I took time off from teaching, and I've always had a passion in coaching. That was kind of my training as a leader in school and in education. I trained as an educational coach and would work with colleagues. So I kind of started that. It was around the same time as I started my ultra running. Actually, it was definitely 2017. Through health coaching, I'm working one-to-one with people, and a lot within it is all. Underneath it all is about growth and improvement, and it's interesting what people do, and what I help people do is to create a plan and to get consistency going with their plan, and once they've obviously got a goal that they want to work on. And it's exactly the same as I do with my training. I have a goal, I then make a plan, and I break it down into very kind of manageable steps, and just kind of focus on one thing at a time, and keep moving small steps and keep moving forward. Like, there's no big jumps and no sudden transformation, becoming a really competitive ultra runner. So that's what I'm helping people do with their health goals. I actually have a lot of my health coaching clients who are, I actually think pretty much all of my health coaching clients are runners. So I've definitely attracted runners, and I actually coach a number of them running as well. So
yes,
we kind of, it's kind of all working together, and just helping people to be able to get that balance still between their healthy physical activity, things that they want to do, but also their career, and also their relationships and their diet, and just kind of getting that whole package working for better health.
So it's kind of a holistic sort of package where, you work on yourself and sort of, I guess it's almost like extending our rather than sort of one giant leap, kind of extending that sort of comfort zone and improving incrementally.
Yes, absolutely. Because I work with people for 6 months as well, so it's so it's a very gradual process of getting that support and making these absolutely small incremental steps forward. And I've been delighted with the results that people have been getting. Got some very happy clients. It's just amazing to see. I'm absolutely loving it.
Yeah, and that's really, and it's really interesting because obviously, if you're doing the ultra trail running as well, it's almost like a metaphor for that in one sense, because I suppose, it seems to me, at least from my perspective, the running is quite intuitive, where you don't really have, like you would do in, say, general marathon running, an idea of, where you'll be at 10 mile, and you kind of just adjust the sail type thing according to whatever challenges come along, and that's really intriguing. And in terms of the sort of the coaching side of things, do you have like a web page or anything like that people can go across and maybe contact if they're interested to learn more, Meryl? Or?
Yeah. So I've got a page, Meryl Cooper Coaching.com, and it's Meryl like Meryl Streep.
Yeah.
So they've got that website. I'm on Instagram as well, Meryl Cooper Coaching. And I'm on Instagram, Meryl Runs Ultras as well. They're all connected up. So And I've also, and obviously know you've got some NLP background, but that's I've got my last training day tomorrow for my NLP coach training with Mindbridge, and it's been fantastic. So I'm absolutely loving being able to help people using NLP as well as my holistic health coaching training. So seen some great results with that. That's
fantastic. I'm sure the NLP people have learnt a lot from you too, Meryl, in terms of the behavioural modelling processes of the mindset that you sort of get into to run, and obviously what you do preparing sort of nutritionally, and we've only sort of scratched the surface. There's so much more to what you do, which is really, really fascinating stuff. But I really want to thank you for coming on board the show. I'm sure the listeners have found that really fascinating, and no doubt if they're interested to know more about your sort of coaching, the web page is there. So thanks again, Meryl. Wish you every success, and we'll keep an eye out to see you get on at the
thank you so much.
That's great stuff. No, thanks for that. That was Meryl Cooper.
Thank you.
Thanks, Meryl. That was Meryl Cooper, health coach at Meryl Cooper Coaching, and GB Ultra Trail runner, giving us a really interesting insight into what she does to prepare and ultra trail running in general, and obviously sort of coaching, what she does too, which is really, really fascinating. On 94.5 FM, the Friday Sports Show, your host, Jimmy Petruzzi.